Hello, everybody. Welcome to the DePIN podcast. I'm your host, Tom Trowbridge. I am thrilled to have on today Brent, my neighbor, effectively in Amsterdam, co-founder and CEO of MapMetrics. Welcome, Brent.
Hi Tom. Thanks for having me.
It's great to have you. It's great to have an Amsterdam-based project. Brent, tell people about MapMetrics. What are you guys doing as quickly as you can?
MapMetrics is a decentralized navigation app. What we're doing is we crowdsource data from our users. So that would be live traffic data. That would be, for example, when you see an obstacle like a hazard or like speed camera, you can drop this into the app as well. You share that with the community. And we're also building a more decentralized map in general. So kind of like the metadata on the map is going to be more in charge of the users. So what you see right now is, for example, that stores need to be uploaded by the owners, and that goes all in kind of like a big pot. And so if opening hours are wrong, the owner is not really updating it. Or when you draw pictures of the store into the app, it's kind of like the other company will own it. So what we're doing is that we're putting the user in charge of this. So we're going to send out quests, and a user can go to a store. They can make a picture of the front of the store. They get rewarded for it. And we can use this data to increase our database. And very cool is what we're also going to do is for menus, for example. So when you take a picture of a menu, we use our AI to kind of like read like the ingredients, the dishes and everything, the pricing. All of that will be distracted from this menu. And next time when another user is searching, for example, for the cheapest restaurant or for a specific dish or whatever, they can just search it in our app and go directly to this restaurant rather than having like pictures of menus or like. So we really want to have the user to update our data, and we're going to reward them for the money we make with this data.
So what's super interesting about what you're doing is if you just think of the name MapMetrics and you're familiar with other people in the space, you think of it as just mapping. But clearly you're moving way beyond the mapping into almost like a combination of Google Street View to also a, one of the more kind of, I don't even know, but like a restaurant app effectively where the menus would be, right? So you're going multiple levels in, and I'm guessing you do that because you're doing it off of the handheld devices, off of people's phones, which have the functionality to both map streets, front of buildings, menus, everything. So you're purely using the hardware that people have. Is that right?
Yeah, correct. So we work with different levels. So for example, the hardware, we have also a device for live traffic data. The reason for this is that when you have a device, you can make sure that live data, which you would need directly into your database, is secure. Because what we are kind of like, when you look at DePIN in general, you have, there is one big unknown, and is the data real that we are kind of like receiving? So without a hardware device, and you can just like, for example, for your phone, let's take Twitter, for example, or X. It's kind of like it's crawling with bots. They're all kind of like fake accounts pushing kind of like propaganda, marketing, or whatever. And this is all done by phone farms. So you have, for example, a person sitting in a factory with like 1 million phones on the wall, one laptop, AI running, and the AI is mimicking all those fake accounts. They're spitting it on X, and this is what people see. The purpose of AI is mimicking, not all of it, but like the brilliance of AI is mimicking human behavior. They have all the data of all the humans, and they can kind of like speed process it and spit it out there. This also means that they can also mimic driving behavior. So imagine an entire wall using our app with fake accounts, having live traffic data. This will drain your liquidity pool in no time. So as soon your token becomes to X amount of value, and you have like a fake accounts running your app, you're getting fake data, which is worthless, and you're paying those fake accounts with the liquidity that is not going to be filled anymore because nobody's going to buy fake data. So you're ruining your project in the long run if you don't have like security to check if this data is real or not. And this is what DePINs are kind of like figuring out now, like how to secure this, because this is a very big if. Because this is also the reason why Bitcoin is so valuable. You cannot print more Bitcoin, but if you can print fake data, that's kind of like the Achilles heel. And that's why we have, for the live traffic, we have a device that encrypts the data when it comes in, and it shares it with our network. So you cannot spoof it, because as soon you encrypt something, you share it with your phone, you cannot manipulate encrypted data. Then we share it with our network. Then we have the phone data. We also share that with our network. If those correspond, we know there's a real user behind it. The data via the phone and the device are real. So that's kind of like, and as well, we don't want to have people driving around with 15 phones, because that will kind of like artificially create a traffic jam, because there are like 15 phones. If this person drives below speed limit, then we will think like, hey, there is something wrong because people are driving below speed limit. There's a traffic jam, or like there is something going on in traffic. Well, there's just one person with a lot of phones. So this is why we have the device, because if you have two devices in the car, it will stop earning, because that would be beating the purpose. It's not to sell devices, it's to secure our network. I hope that's kind of
Well,
it's a lot.
no, but I find it interesting on two levels. So one is there is a whole class, I would say, of DePIN projects that are taking advantage of the capabilities that mobile devices have, iPhones, whatever, right? So that's a whole class of DePIN projects. You guys are obviously doing it, but you've got Silencio doing it for noise, and others doing it for a whole number of different things, right? But it also that leads to a vulnerability, which you've outlined. Like the upside is the ubiquity of these phones and the huge number of potential users, right? So that's a big upside. The downside is this potential manipulation data quality issue. And some have solved that, like the Hive Mapper, one of I guess a competitor of yours or someone else in the ecosystem, makes people buy their own devices. So I would think they have far less ubiquity in terms of market ability of people to do what they're doing, but they have much more certainty with regard to data verifiability or data quality, right? So I guess that's the tension in these two options, right?
No, definitely. I totally agree. And it's how do you want to grow? How do you want to scale? Because it's way harder to scale with just hardware. It's easier to just go with the devices people already have. And there will be solutions for this as well, because a lot of DPINs obviously see this coming, and they're looking into, okay, what can we do? KYC, what else can we do, right? Like where are kind of like the niches? Like what is there's a lot of AI functionalities that we could put in place as well to detect if the data would be generated by an AI. But in generally, hardware is the safest route so far to tackle this issue.
Right. And so then the question becomes, how many devices do you need to be online to get the enough data to be valuable, right? And then and particularly with your ambitions, where you want not just traffic effectively, but video, street view, menus. Presumably, you're targeting a pretty large number of devices in order to get the scale of data that's relevant to your potential customers.
Yeah, that's correct. So how we solve this is we have different tiers. The first tier is like the hardware device, like the live traffic. That's obviously with the hardware you earn the most. And then we have a free tier, so people can just use it, still earn. But like the tokenomics work this way, that the hardware is kind of like the golden, like you kind of like premium. We call it supreme account with the hardware. So you unlock kind of like more tasks, more quests, more earnings. You have the free account because we want to scale and we want users, like we don't want to press users to buy the hardware, but it's just the data is way safer for us to use and to sell. So we need to be able to sell a product at a premium price. So we have the free version, and then we have, like, for example, the quests is a whole different story, because you can verify quests via other users. So for example, if I ask you to take a picture of a menu in a store, or in a restaurant, sorry, then another user can check if this menu is really a picture of a menu. He can check if this if the name of the store is on this menu of the restaurant, and he can, like, there's a super much data checkpoints that another user can verify, where you don't need to have this hardware in place. Because, for example, if you know which store he's in, if you know other factors like the location, you know, all those kind of like little variables, you can check like this is real. This is not like AI generated. And especially when a picture comes into play, it's way easier to verify data as real. So it really depends on which data stream we're talking about. So live traffic is almost impossible to kind of like not verify without hardware, but a picture of a menu definitely is. So we don't need hardware for this.
So you mentioned this, and I was going to bring it up later, but since you mentioned, let's get into it, because you mentioned the different tiers, rewards. Help us understand how that works. I think that sort of token economics are a critical piece of kind of successful DePIN projects. So
Definitely.
how do you guys design your token economics?
So what we're doing is the first tier is the SPT, so it's called like the special position tracker. That's the hardware. You can earn up to 220 mmap a day, and that goes for 2-hour drive. The reason why we chose for a 2-hour drive and not 24 hours, we get a lot of feedback like, why are you not doing this for 24 hours? Like, why can I not earn the entire day? And that's kind of like the wrong way of looking at it. What we're doing is, instead of having 220 for the entire day, we reduce the 24 hours to 2 hours to make sure that not only truckers or taxi drivers are benefiting from our project, but also people with a normal commute, because they are giving the live traffic as well. So you cannot just build like an entire ecosystem just on truckers and taxi drivers. So this is why we reduce this to 2 hours. Then we have the voting system. The voting will be for free as well. So if you have, I believe the free mmap will be up to 50 a day, if I'm not mistaken. So that will be on top if you have a hardware device on top of your hardware device. And then we have another 50 in the bucket for like the menus and like the entire quest section as well. So like we were up to roughly 300 to 400 mmap a day, and we will giving out like more for more quests. So we're still kind of like building the tokenomics. Now we're having so many DePINs live, so we kind of like revisiting exactly what is the best way to go, because we have seen some successful ones, we see some less successful ones, and we're learning a lot from them. But because we are not using one data point, but our system is very complex. So we have live traffic, we have direct data, we have voting data, we have like, there's a lot that comes into it. So we have different tiers of earning. So we kind of like need to really, really figure out what the best model is here.
And is that earning, are those numbers you shared, do those stay constant? How
they will
how do you
decrease
think
over
those numbers
time.
over
Yeah.
time? They will decrease.
Yeah. They decrease over time because obviously you need to have that that kind of like deflation of numbers, because otherwise you're overflowing the market with your token.
And then what about the demand side? How does that work?
So that's actually super cool. We have, I think you had him on this podcast or podcast. I'm not sure how to call it. Let's say podcast. The guys from Charge, they are now using our map, for example. We already have a B2B product. So what's super cool is that a lot of I'm talking with a lot of startups, and they almost all try to use Mapbox or Google Maps as a map. What we're building is not just kind of like an app and collecting data. For the B2B side, we are using the data we're collecting from our users directly. So we have a map of the world, and people can buy this map to use for their product. So, for example, every DePIN needs a map because they need to show where the data points are. And we can provide this. And for example, for DePINs, we're giving it away for free. So they can just sign up for a grant and they can use it. So Charge is there. We have a list of 10 signups now. So we going one by one, we're going to integrate them on our map. But we're also talking with one of the biggest scooter rental companies, shared rental companies in the Netherlands. Probably you heard of them. They called Check. And they're in Rotterdam as well, I think so. And we're talking with a German car rental company and a food delivery company as well, and a scooter rental company in Rome. So like there are a lot of people need those maps, and the business is booming because we have way more shared vehicle companies. We have way more delivery services. We have like this industry is growing from a 30 billion to, I believe, an 80 billion in 10 years because we're going to have self-driving cars. We're going to have drone delivery. We're going to have so many additional layers of mapping that we need. And we are going to provide this by crowdsourcing all the data. And the cool thing about crowdsourcing, and what's kind of like the heart of DePIN, is that you can send people on quests as well. So if a drone company would say like, hey, I need places where I can land my drones, we can, where do you need them? And we can send people on quest, like, hey, can you take a picture of your back garden and take a picture where this drone probably can land and deliver your packages. So we can kind of like set people to work and reward them accordingly. Instead of taking the data for granted and getting everything for free, we can collaborate with our users. And that's so cool about DePIN.
Listen, I think you're right. That is kind of a foundational part of DePIN is this crowdsourcing of physical infrastructure or crowdsourcing of data via shared or individual physical infrastructure. So I grasp that for sure. I think that's why, and I phrase it even differently. The only way to beat the large tech companies like a Google is if you have a whole community working on it. No one company ever is going to have the ability to invest enough to do that. But if you have set up a reward system that attracts thousands and thousands of people, that's something that a big company can't compete with. So I violently agree with you there. But how does that translate into those customers? How does that translate into the token demand? Do they buy the token in order to purchase the data effectively?
Yeah, so what we're going to do is that all the data, every income that we generate as a company, 50% we buy back the tokens. So, for example, if a company like a scooter rental company normally uses Google Maps, they pay like 5K a month. Then we say we can do it definitely already for cheaper because our infrastructure is run by users, not by a company. So we can do it for cheaper. And besides that, 50% goes to users rather than us directly in our own pockets.
So 50% by burn, and
Mhm.
why not 80 or 90?
So it's a model that we need to test obviously as well because we first of all we're a startup, we're smaller, we want to grow. The quicker we can grow, the more powerful our product, the more money we can make. So if you put like 80, you get less money in the pocket for the company to grow. And there needs to be a healthy balance to be able to hire more staff, to hire more salespeople, and to kind of like there's a lot to say to. Yes, you can. I mean, 100 would be perfect, right? That would be ideal. But you need to also look at the business side of things, and you need to grow and increase
Well,
earnings. Mhm.
no, because if you had
Mhm.
100, that would drive demand for the token. Presumably, the business owns some token, and so that would make the token more valuable, and you could fund the business by selling some of the treasury.
That's true, yes. But then you're going to heavily lean on the token, and as a startup, you cannot just lean on the token because you don't want to withdraw the liquidity directly from the token. You want to have you first you want to go for your stable
Of,
income.
of course, I mean, listen, I get it. It's just an interesting dilemma because you also want to be aligned with your token holders and where all revenue goes in. And so, the farther that divergence is, the less aligned it is. But listen, there's a whole range, right? There's groups at 90, there's groups at 30. So there's a whole range. And I don't think it's clear what it is. I think my general view is that the more aligned you are with token holders, the better. And the project, I'll phrase it this way, the projects that have, I think there's a scale benefit that's not linear between the amount of buy burn in terms of revenue. So if you know 100% goes in, then that's super clear and easy. And the token is probably at a premium versus those that are slightly below that, and a way bigger premium to even lower than that. But that's a theory that I can't point to empirical data on. But fair enough. Buy burn, ton of sense. That's how it works. I get it.
In the end, it's all about learning because it's super new. We say 50-50. Obviously, if we see that we make it 60-40 and that increase our users and our data sources, and that's why we grow bigger and faster. Obviously, we're going to change that. It's like that's the thing about startups as well. You're pivoting all the time. You don't have like one product, it's set in stone, that's it. You need to feel like, what is the community, what do they want, what do the businesses want. You need to be that middleman and kind of like see like how do we grow the fastest and the most accurate, and how do we make everyone happy.
Totally get it. My only is 60-40 is not that it's either 50-50 or you're going to like 80-20, like or 90-10. Like the little increment is going to be lost, I think. Help me understand scale. Where are your participants? How many are there? How many do you need? What's frequency of use? Obviously, you said 2 hours a day, but help us understand that.
So we're growing quite quickly right now. We have roughly a month, like 4,000 people live driving around with our app. They're dropping like a couple of thousand kind of like data points on a daily basis. It's ridiculous. Over 167 countries. It's really
Wow.
growing now. And yeah, you will see with our new website, it's going live within probably next week when we have a big launch coming up. Then we will publish the map itself that other companies are buying, and then we will share our data points as well, so everybody can see how many users we have. We have like tons in Madrid, we have in London, New York, like a lot of cities in the US as well, LA. We are in Australia, Japan, South Korea. Like it's all over the world, and yeah, it's super cool when you're gonna see it when it goes live, because you see we kind of like market like where they drop like speed cameras, road constructions, and that kind of stuff.
And what's the ambition? And is 4,000 over that amount appropriate, or would you rather have 4,000 just in, I don't know, Germany as an example, or US?
That's a very good
what,
question.
What do you need?
Obviously, you prefer to have them focused, but on the other hand, having your feelers out in the field. And we're now having a new setup with the invite a friend function, that people, when they invite a friend, that they can earn while their friend is driving. So they get like 5% of the earnings of their friend. We really see that is really pushing growth. So in this scenario, actually, it's really good that we have all those different setups, because or all these different countries, because we have possibility now to grow, because we have foot soldiers there as well. So it's easier then to grow within those countries than have to start over or totally blank in a new country. So it's kind of like double, because you want to have concentrated data in one country, but on the other hand, this gives us better possibility to grow quicker.
Yes, I get it. So your point is you've got sort of core community members all over, and now you just have to figure out how to maximize and leverage those community members to really grow that over time and accelerate those markets. I get that. What is the goal in terms of, to build this into the network you want? Do you want 100,000, participants, or would you rather have 10,000 just in the UK? Like what, I mean, or is Japan a market that no one else is mapping? So it's really important to be in Japan, because you could look at it from the demand side as well, I suppose.
Yeah, no, definitely. I think the goal, first instance, why we started all this, is to more protect and visualize the value of people, their data. So what I really liked about crypto in general is the more privacy that you get. And what I like about DePIN is that it visualizes the value of data. So if I'm sharing X, Y, and Z, I'm getting this amount of tokens, and this token is amount like goes on the market. My data is like the token is representing my data. It goes on the market, and you can see literally what it's doing. You can literally see like, hey, my live traffic data is X. My store data is this. I mean, you can really, really kind of finally feel, because now we take it for granted. Like our data is just taken away from us, and we have no clue what's happening. We have no clue how much it's worth. We don't even know what kind of data they're collecting. And that's kind of like disturbing if you think about it. If you go into the data stuff in general, if you think about the fact that that people know, like for example, those companies like Google know how much you earn, and they don't have your paycheck, but it's how they use their data. So they know how much your building is worth, where you live in. They know that people live up their standards So they have a very accurate estimate how much you earn because of this kind of data sets. They know if you like cooking, how much you're in the supermarket, yes or no. Like what time you're out of work. They know like literally everything. And that's kind of like disturbing. So like you're asking what is our goal? First of all, making people more anonymous again with their data, because you don't need a name attached to the data source. You just need like the general information for marketing to work. And second, make people aware how much the data is worth by paying them back for what they actually share with the network. And then if we talk about numbers, I really hope that we can just kick all those those major apps, their bots, and just tell them like, well, the way you're operating is just unfair. You're not sharing anything back. You're collecting everything. Yes, we're getting an amazing free app. Don't get me wrong. Google Maps and Apple Maps are amazing, but the fact that they take you for granted, that's something that we need to have in the past. So I hope to just surpass them at one point. Yeah.
But does that, and what does it take to surpass them? You need 1 million people contributing? You need
2 billion a month.
2 million a month. Okay.
2 billion a month.
2 billion
They
a
have
month. Is
2
what you
billion
need.
users a month. Yeah. Google Maps
That
has
is
2
a
billion.
lot. No,
That
but
is a lot.
how many do you need?
How much? How many? I think that if we started going into 1 to 2 million a month, that we are like a very healthy source of accurate data. But I'm 100% sure that we will. I mean, you never. Yeah.
And then in terms of revenue potential, you mentioned the market is
30
50
billion
going
at the
to
moment
30 going to 80 billion, like, and that's a market for what? For maps particularly?
for maps. Yes. So for map data, so point of interest, search, the map itself, and everything what has to do with layers on top of the mapping that you like, all those APIs that you can get from Google Maps. That those are kind of like, yeah, those all together are like worth 30 billion.
Wow. All right. Well, let's talk about Brent for a bit, because your background seems pretty well suited to what you've done here in terms of some of the companies you worked for before. Why don't you outline some of your background and kind of how you got here?
So my background started off in marketing. So I was kind of like traveling the world doing some marketing jobs, and I was collecting that data in the background and not really thinking a lot of it. And then I moved into startups and really fell in love with it, because I really like the dynamics between it. If you're wearing so many hats, you're constantly working on like something different and trying to find like to unlock some, I don't know, like the next milestone. So I really fell in love with the dynamics. And this first startup I worked for was like a shared scooter company in Italy, in Rome. Really loved it. Unfortunately, they had to wait for the funding, so I had to leave. And then the second startup was like a competitor to Uber here in London. And then I moved back to marketing, but then more as a data analyst, because during those years in those startups, I was more working on the data and what was it doing, and like how are users using the product, and like kind of like more into the details. And then then I bought myself a motorcycle. I was driving a lot. I really love that thing. Like just kind of like going through like the forest or whatever, and just drive around there. And I was just using those navigation apps like Waze and Google Maps, and I was just like looking at them and like, this is too good to be free. Like there is something going on here. And then I went into that rabbit hole, and yeah, here we are.
That's fascinating. So, I mean, what's interesting about that is marketing is obviously a critical piece of what you're doing. So none of these businesses survive without marketing. You've got to market and bring on those 2 million different individuals who are going to use their phones to participate in your network. So without marketing, you don't get anywhere. And then the other part is the shared, um, the sort of, I would call it almost CPIN, almost centralized physical infrastructure networks in a way, in some way, right? Because shared scooters or Ubers and the scooter app you mentioned have a lot in common with DePIN, just that there's a business, but one company behind it, as opposed to some decentralized governance. But you could almost, they're sort of precursors to DePIN in a way. I mean, certainly the Uber competitor is, the scooter probably isn't, but you still get similar dynamics, I'm guessing, to learn from. Is that fair?
Yeah, definitely. Especially when you look at the mapping of it, like that. Then I got already like in touch with what like how crazy the world is that you pay so much money to just display a product on a map, for example, and then all those features like search. Like why is it so expensive to make a search for a location? Why is that for startups not more feasible? Why is it not like a more approachable channel that they can tap into to just to help them grow rather than taking as much of money out of those projects as possible? Like that's something that bugged me from the beginning, and then kind of like started off here with this navigation app because I just like love driving, and that's actually how it came along. Yeah.
And when did you guys launch? Tell us a bit of the story of the where you are in
Oh,
your kind of journey.
yeah, that's a very interesting one. So, yeah, what we launched 3 years ago. I mean, we started 3 years ago, and it went like we started off on Reddit, like talking about our frustrations, right? Like, why is this happening? Why are we depending on an app that is just taking us for granted? That was like the first mindset, and then people starts talking and discussing with me like a lot of stuff, and I was continuing replying, and then somebody said, like, you should open a Discord. You have so many people here. They're interested in this topic. Just open a Discord and let's go. And at that point, yeah, just did that. And then let's make a project out of this. So we had like very early, a lot of backing already, like a couple of thousand people were interested in this project. And then we just gave it a name, build a website. And we start already with like our background is also my brother is in the company as well, and his background is hardware. So he develops hardware from scratch. And we needed back then already with AI already coming, like we need something to validate that data that we're going to live stream to our network. So we kind of like had this hardware idea, and the community loved it as well. So at that point we were just kind of like, okay, let's build the hardware, let's go for it. And then we pre-sold 2.5 devices like from the beginning already. And then we're like, okay, this is real, this we have to build this, people want this, let's give it a go. And then we were focusing on this, and then unfortunately, we hired the wrong agency to develop the app. So their stuff really, really went a little bit south. So we went live with the tokens, even with the project and everything, with an app that we didn't trust, but we needed to because we promised our users. And then it was just like the app was not improving because it was so poorly done. Everything needed to be done as quick as possible as well, because we went so quick in the beginning. There was like some time pressure, like, okay, I want to get this live, I want to get this live. So if I would do it over again, I would just say like, let's stop here. Let's revisit what we're doing because the app is very poor. Let's hire a different agency to develop the app and let's go. Let's kind of like redo the thing. Gonna take another year. Very painful, but we start building on top of something that was not suitable anyway. So that was a super big learning curve. In the end, we succeeded. The app is now like 10 times better, and now the new update is going to be even better than the previous one. So yeah, so like we kind of like put our heads in the ground and just started like, okay, we're gonna fix this. We're not gonna pull the plug. We're not gonna go away. We're gonna sort this out because we had so much following. We had so many people that liked this project. The easy thing is now to quit, but we're not. So so that's with Super Adventure was like, it was crazy. Now we have our own development team as well. That's way better, obviously, than depending on an agency. And no, it's now going very well, and the community is loving it again. And it was definitely worth the while to kind of like keep on going.
Well, listen, I don't think it counts as a startup if you don't have one big setback along the way. Like then that's too easy. I don't know any stories where there hasn't been a setback. And that's a good lesson for people, I think, which is wait a little bit longer to get something right. And I would caution also, though, and I think I can't remember one of very famous. I think it was gosh, it wasn't Elon, but a very famous person in tech was making the point: just get something out there and start iterating, start changing. His view is don't wait for it to be perfect. Just get a product out and iterate and change. And so you have to marry that perspective, which is also true with don't put a complete like crappy thing out there that's going to turn off all your customers and make them not want to come back to you. So somewhere between not waiting for the perfect one and not launching with something that actually doesn't work at all is where you want to be, and that's the judgment call, I guess.
It is. But for us, it was especially as well, like the pressure of the community, as they have been waiting for so long and they wanted to earn those tokens. That was just mainly it. And everything else was done well. The hardware was like solid. The project itself was solid. It was just the app was not functioning, and that was just so painful. After it was also very very unlucky, I have to say, because the company that we hired, it was like an old roommate from mine when I was studying in Rome, and he was living in Georgia, and we really really wanted to go there, but to just check in to how everything was going. And but we couldn't, because first was a COVID wave, and then the war started, and then another COVID wave. So we kind of like was pushed back to the lounge before we could visit, and then it was like, oh yeah, then we discovered that it would have been better to wait. Yeah.
Fair enough. Fair enough. Well, I mean, definitely is interesting, and that I usually ask what hasn't gone as people expected, and that's certainly one that is a good lesson for everybody. What in terms of you've been working in this space now for multiple years. What other projects in the space do you think are interesting? Do you look to for leadership or guidance or examples on anything from tokenomics to community building? Anything? What do you find interesting out there?
Wow, there are so many of them. The cool thing in general is that they all do their own piece, and they have like, even if you compare it to, not really. If you compare us, like for example, us with Hive Mapper, yes, on the surface, roughly the same. But if you look into like a little bit more detail, they are really kind of like making Street View, and we are more focusing on local stores and navigating itself. So actually, two totally different products, but they look very similar because you put it in the car. And I think you have like those overlaps very, very often in DePIN, because it looks for the outside, it looks a little bit similar, but like the end goal is totally different. And I have to say that we're super happy, first of all, with Peak. They are layer one. We onboarded there because I mean the team is super friendly, amazing, helpful. I mean they were super super on point with everything, and yeah, it's just epic to be part of like an ecosystem that just starts focusing on deep and totally. So we went all in and just said like, okay, let's do this together because it's just cool, and they have like the same mindset as we do, so that's super nice. I have to say we're now working with Ambient as well. So we didn't officially announce, but we're going to share some bits. They are interested in our map as well, as I was mentioning. We're interested in their data points, and this is what you mentioned before, and this is so cool. We together as DPINs, we're very strong. I mean, can just, for example, they do air quality monitoring. We do mapping, then put some weather next to it, and you already have like everything covered in Google Maps, for example. And then you can also look into, okay, fair enough. So what do you want to know? How do you want to drive? Do you want to avoid, for example, do you want to have a rain alert before you start biking, or do you want to drive your biking route through like air quality green zones rather than red, right? Like those kind of stuff will be possible in DePIN in the future if we collaborate, all of us. So that's what we're trying to build together. Same as Charge. They are now having like this entire network of charging stations. We are going to have their API on the network as well. So people can tap into their API and they can just navigate with our app to those charging points. So all those little bits coming together is way more powerful than one entity, because all those small DPINs are crowdsourcing it as well. So if you crowdsource all those different layers, you're indestructible. You just have to put the pieces together.
Super interesting. Yeah, listen, I get it, and I think that is and I'll give you another one right along those lines. Are you? There's a actually project I had on recently. I think it's called Aki. Have you seen them? It's effectively a DPIN of DPINs that is creating, using all the stuff you're talking about in a way to create 3D models for machines. So basically create basically allow machines to navigate in the real world. And they effectively are tapping into everything like you mentioned, but to create the 3D map that allow machine to understand what reality is like. So I guess that it is similar to what you're referencing as well. So I think that will be incredibly powerful. So this all should continue to go well. Do you think Google? Do you think these other companies respond? Are you worried about competition from existing? Are you worried about competition from decentralized protocols, or is the world just too big so you're not concerned about it? Like when you go to sell to a customer, are there if they don't buy, is it because there's a couple reasons, right? Always too expensive, product's not good enough, competitor is too hard to dislodge. How do you think about it from that side?
Yeah, this is a good one. I think regarding the latter, especially B2C, I think that for DePINs to work, they have to have the quality of the native apps, because people always put convenience above earning a little bit of tokens. So if Google Maps stays better over time, there's no way we can catch up, right? I mean, let's be honest, like nobody's just they're probably going to use some features of our app. That's totally right, but we will never replace them if we're not being at least as good. So that's the goal. Yeah, I mean, there's so many variables in this game, so there's not like one answer. I guess it's a very tough one, but the only thing what we can do is focus on listening to our users. What do they want? What do they think? How we can grow? And even like if there is they're like even if it's very difficult, find a way to build different steps towards that goal, because I mean, they are in the end the ones that use your app, and they are the ones that recommend your app. And what you see now with a lot of big companies, they don't even do advertising anymore. So look at, for example, Tesla is barely any advertising. Or if you look at Nvidia, they just have to upload like their own videos, like how they present the world, like what the new product is, because the quality is so good. Other people are just recommending it to others. It's like word of mouth is the best advertising you can have.
So I get that, but you need customers to pay you money, right?
Yes, so that's the
So
B2B side. Yeah.
right. So but that's what drives the token value and everything else. So that's the B2B side. So what do those customers require, and what makes them choose you or not? Are you cheaper? Is it better? Is it what? Where do you compete in that?
So there are different layers as well. First of all, we're going to be cheaper. Second of all, startups just they cannot handle the purchase by the prices of Google Maps and Mapbox. They're just like, as soon you start growing as a project, the prices just ramp up. So our B2B is way cheaper, and in the future, because we are crowdsourcing
And how much
our
cheaper do you
stuff,
think?
it's at least 1/3 of Google Maps.
Wow, so 60% cheaper
Yeah.
for a similar
Well,
quality
no.
of data.
Yeah.
For a
Yeah,
similar
well,
data,
in the future it will be.
but
So
right
now
now.
it's not there yet, but we keep the price the same, but we will grow, and our community is going to help us to fill in those empty gaps. So we're going to be way cheaper, and we're going to be more accurate in the future as well. So the cool thing, because I was mentioning before, like the quests, if now a customer asks us like, hey, we need X, Y, and Z data in this area, can you apply, can you kind of like accomplish this to gather this for our API, or build a new API for us? We can do so. We don't have to buy it from other companies. We can just ask users like, hey, help us out. We can we can increase the price of the token if you go to this area, and they will earn from that as well. So it's kind of like a little bit like we all doing this together. It's really, really kind of like a community built project, because as soon we kind of like have more customers and they have different needs, we can fulfill this by crowdsourcing.
Gotcha. Totally. And so you're more responsive is the point. You can be faster. You can respond faster to customers. Completely get that. Really interesting. Listen, last year when I was doing this podcast, I was asking people to predict the Bitcoin price by the end of the year, and I think people generally got it right. We ended up over 100. So I'm kind of curious. I think we did anyway, but I'm kind of curious now. We got a whole nother year ahead of us, and I mentioned Bitcoin. It has detached from our world a lot, obviously, but it's still important. And so, where do you, given that was kind of the foundational, decentralized project, we're now sitting here in January. Well, we've got basically we have 10 years before the end of the year. And so, what do you have any predictions on the market on Bitcoin for the end of the year?
Yeah, that's a tough one. Whew. So I first of all, can I say something else like real quickly? What I really do hope for DePIN is to kind of like detach of this pricing in the crypto market, because what my prediction is for DePIN is that because we are projects building actually something in the real world, we getting Web 2 money, we getting kind of like we getting Web 3 money, we can kind of like getting all this additional liquidity from different angles. My prediction is that in the future, because if we're going to sell maps, if the market for Bitcoin or like for crypto goes down, doesn't mean that the maps are not selling anymore. So my prediction is that DePIN is going to detach to the pricing of the general crypto, and then you can really see the power of blockchain rather than focusing on DeFi and meme coins. Not to call them in one same kind of like bucket, but more like I really think that that's going to be the future of DePIN. Having that said, Bitcoin, it's the world is so it's a difficult place right now because the market's going up and down. AI is going from US net to China. You have the oil markets. You have like so many variables. Conservative guess 150, 175.
All right, fair enough. I like it. I'll take the over, but that's great. But I will also, Brent. I'll just make one comment. Um, I've even spoken about this. The agreement, I sort of another violent agreement with you on that. I sort of my point is depends on a meme, but I think that what happens is your future you outlined deep in decoupling. I would say you say detachment, really decoupling from the rest of the market. I think that is inevitable, but the requirement for that is revenue. Because once there is revenue and these buy burns kick in, then it doesn't matter if not one other person buys your token, not one other person likes your token, because your project, your customers effectively are the demand for that token. And so then you don't have to deal with marketing, you don't have to deal with anything else, right? If you are pulling in customers, generating revenue, doing buy burn, that's all that matters. And that once those mechanics start to click in and you see projects that's working, that should lead all the projects in that DePIN space to benefit from it and also have them be much more, the investors there, much more revenue focused as opposed to meme focused. Now, that revenue may become a meme by itself. And so you may have a whole thing move like that. And then all of a sudden you're back correlated again. So, who knows? But the key to the world that you're articulating is revenue. And I was hopeful that 2025 is a year for significant deep in revenue. We'll see, right? Because you've got to deal with with businesses, right? Businesses and enterprise are slow. So it will be Q2 or second half 25. I don't know. We'll see. But that's I guess the gating factor for this decoupling to happen is revenue. I would say.
I couldn't agree more. But that's the cool thing about DePINs. They're more like companies really. They
Yeah.
need to make a profit. They're really kind of like they selling a product that's data. That data is needed all across the world. Data is the new gold. That's what they say. And I couldn't agree more. It's just like selling your data, get the revenue in, put it in the token, and that's kind of like the golden goose.
Well, Brent, how do people follow you? How do they follow MapMetrics? How do they? Where's the app they can download so they can start earning? Help people figure out how to participate.
Yeah, cool. So they can just visit mapmetrics.org. Mapmetrics with CS at the end, not an X like the movie, but with a CS. And you can find everything there. So the app, all our socials, Discord, like everything is on the website.
Fantastic. Well, Brent, great to have you on, and look forward to having you on again when we're making more progress towards those, scaling up those users globally and figuring out what countries you end up having more scale in. It's
Hmm.
such a fascinating world to be in. So,
Yeah,
congrats on
cool.
the success so far, and look forward to having you on again.
Thanks a lot. Thanks for having me.